Of the entire miniseries, this is the video I've dreaded the most, because the Skypeia arc is the single most divisive stretch of One Piece. The only other arc that comes close to its level of opinion variance among fans is Wano, but with Wano the split in opinion comes almost exclusively from several simple plot points. Meanwhile, Skypeia's entire existence is a polarizing subject. On the surface, it's an understandable situation. The things some people love about Skypeia are the same things other people hate. But that explanation is a bit of a cop-out, because a few simple alterations could mollify the people who dislike Skypeia, while not alienating the ones who love it. So let's take a look at how an arc can create such strongly opposed opinions. With the conclusion of the Alabasta arc, One Piece is now officially in full swing. The crew is once again on the open seas, Luffy and Zoro have accrued very impressive bounties, and Vivi, the plot device disguised as a character, has been replaced in the crew by Nico Robin. Robin will be getting much more focus 2 episodes down the line, so for now suffice to say she's an archaeologist and assassin who was technically a minor villain during Alabasta, but spent almost her entire screen time helping the Straw Hats out of jams. Before the divisive parts of the arc, Skypeia starts out extremely strong, with a powerful reiteration of the series' main thesis statement, and the most appropriate for the story villain introduction of all time. After several trials and tribulations, the crew makes their way into the sky where there is inexplicably a floating sea made of semi-solid clouds. Evidently, there's a whole second society of sky people who live on island clouds up there, although we only see a single island, the titular Skypeia. The gang gets unknowingly caught up in a battle royale-esque deathmatch while searching for a lost city of gold. They run afoul of the self-appointed god of Skypeia, Enel, and Luffy gets swallowed by a giant snake before lucking his way through a fight he should have no business winning by a combination of Enel's ignorance and arrogance. The Straw Hats get their gold and skedaddle back down to the actual ocean, after coincidentally ending 400 years of constant war and preventing a genocide because Luffy wanted to ring a giant golden bell. It is now time for me to take a side on the Skypeia conflict. Please keep in mind that I am going to offer some solutions to broker peace in a bit before you come down on me for my opinion. I think Skypeia sucks. It's a slog of a time, and other than some of the pre-Sky Island chapters, it could be removed from the story without having any impact on the overall narrative. But hear me out, it didn't have to be either of those things. Let's start with the lack of impact it makes on the rest of the series. There are 2 changes here that could amend that misstep, one small change and one larger one. Starting with the small one, the Sky Islands have a unique type of technology called dials that can store things for later use. Jet dials store and release wind, scent dials store and release smells, milky dials store and release sky clouds, etc. The Straw Hats bring back a bunch of dials with them, and they're utilized in Usopp's inventions, but they never come up as something other than an unacknowledged background element. Even just showing and calling out the specific dials when they're being used as a part of Usopp's fights would be enough to make the entire Skypeian trip feel useful. The potential confusion of opponents who have never seen dials before also lends itself well to Usopp's unique style of deception-based combat. But shortly after Skypeia ends, they're only ever mentioned for their ability to act as cassettes in offhand one-liners, and Usopp eventually gets a completely different bag of combat tricks based on shape-changing plants that all but replaces dials. The bigger change is also the simpler one, though it's a bit harder to implement. Have a character from Skypeia join the crew. You know what would make the entire arc feel important and emotionally relevant? If the Straw Hats had any sort of personal connection with the Sky Islanders. You know what would make Skypeia an unskippable and vital part of the narrative? Introducing a main character during it. Now don't get me wrong here, I don't mean add one of the existing Skypeian characters to the crew. They're all boring at best and cardboard cutouts at worst, but there's no reason an actual character couldn't have been added to the arc and subsequently the crew. As for the fact that Skypeia is a slog to get through, I again see 2 solutions. Either make it shorter, or make it longer. Personally, I lean towards making it longer, adding in a few stops at different Sky Islands to flesh out the Sky culture, and gradually build up Enel as a formidable and all-powerful god who destroyed his home and usurped the Sky's most powerful island. Alternatively, skip the preamble and throw the Straw Hats directly into the death game instead of messing around for a while first, then remove all the aimless wandering around where everyone is separated and nothing happens. With my story and narrative grievances settled, it's time to bring up something that often gets overlooked when talking about Skypeia. The massive yikes that is the Shandians. There's no easy way around it, so let's just cut to the chase. The backstory of Skypeia is about a glorified Christopher Columbus analog who befriends and civilizes the Shandians, a culture clearly based on various indigenous peoples. The emotional core of Skypeia is a very touching story of the descendants of 2 close friends of different cultures trying to reach each other, despite substantial separation of both time and space. But it also implicitly frames indigenous cultures as barbaric, and ennobles the early European explorers who ravaged the Americas in search of riches while exploiting the people who were living there. Even with all my other gripes solved, this is inexcusable. Skypeia could have been a good story. Enel as a nearly invincible figure who literally believes himself to be God, being brought down by Luffy, who despises restrictions and iniquity more than anything, because Luffy is by nature unaffected by the very thing that makes Enel so powerful, is great stuff. The sense of adventure that comes with exploring a civilization atop the clouds is prime real estate for One Piece to cover. The fact that things work differently in the sky is a decent enough excuse to give the Straw Hats some functional magic in the form of dials. And obviously the lead up to Skypeia proper is good by itself while also leading to an excellent payoff down the line. but it never comes together. It's both too rushed and obnoxiously dragged out. It introduces interesting concepts, but fails to capitalize on any of them. And it has a powerful emotional heart, but it's completely unrelated to the Straw Hats. But my problems with Skypeia pale in comparison to what comes after. The next video will be about the travesty of Long Ring Long Land.